Well, it's based on something that actually happened. And it happened during the writing of my third book, Agent Six. And while I was writing that book, my parents my parents are English and Swedish. My dad is English, my mum is Swedish, so I'm half Swedish, half English. And they had moved to Sweden, retired to Sweden. And I got a call from my dad saying that my mum was in a mental hospital in Sweden, and I needed to fly out there. And I booked a ticket. The next day I was traveling to Heathrow, and I got a call from my mum saying everything my dad had said was a lie, and she was flying to England to meet me. And she did fly to England, and I met her at Heathrow, and we went back to my apartment, and she told me a story, which was this thriller story about what was going on in Sweden. And so it's the real seed. The seed from this book is real. So that's why. Why is it contemporary? Because it's based on this real event. Why is it half England, half Sweden? Because it's based on this real event, yeah. The seed, the opening of the book, as I described, is very true. I mean, that's, exactly the opening happened. The story she told, my mum told me in my apartment, I can't honestly really remember it all. It was about 4 hours of conversation, but the most important thing was the feeling of, I'm not sure if it's real or not. I'm not sure whether to believe my mum or my dad. And that concept I took and turned into a fictional story. I wanted to take that idea and write a story about it and capture that sense. And that is true. But the character of Daniel, who looks like, in a sense, me, and the character of Tilda, who would then look like my mum, they're fictional, completely fictional. And the seed is real. The details that grow out of it are fiction. That's how I would describe it. Well, that's an interesting question, because this is, a book about identity, about my mum left Sweden when she was very young, and the character of Tilda is exploring this idea of feeling like somewhere that is home, and yet because you leave there, when you go back to them, to the people you're going back to, you seem different. And to the people that you're living with in England or wherever, you seem different too. So you never have a clear sense of where you belong. And I find that interesting. As a writer, when I'm in London, I don't feel like I'm 100% English. And when I'm in Sweden, I feel foreign. But I quite like that as a writer, because as a writer, it's useful being on the outside. It's useful to have that perspective of looking in. But not everyone likes that. Some people love a sense of home, and if that's lost, it can be quite an emotional loss for people. It's interesting because if you're a writer, the Bible is a very important book, like most of it. And they're important not necessarily because of what you believe in, but in terms of just a narrative. They're full of so many interesting stories. It's very difficult as a writer not to be interested in these big religious texts. They're very important keystones. And with this, I knew what I was looking for. I was looking for something that was essentially ambiguous. And yet, at the same time, I didn't want to take a piece of the Bible that just looked like a piece of wisdom. I mean, sometimes they just look like an order or an instruction. I wanted something that was slightly different to that. And so, I was looking through at different passages. I had a sense that it wouldn't be the Old Testament. I had a feeling it would be the New Testament. And I came across this, and I was like, this is it. You have this real spark. You're like, this is the passage. And actually, you're almost amazed. I don't know it wasn't like I knew it in my head. I had to find it. And when you do find it, there's this moment of real excitement. So there was a kind of feeling of elation when I found it. Yeah, I can.
A betrothed princess.
Yeah. I mean, the whole book is about a mother speaking to her son. And this is what happened. This is the real seed. I went back to my apartment, and my mum told me a story. And I realized one of the reasons I love stories, and I'm a writer, is because I've always loved listening to stories. And I really wanted to capture that. And the whole fairy tale story, which is the troll element, in a way that's one of my earliest experiences of stories. Stories being told, listening to them, not reading them, but listening. And they're always this strange combination of, you hear them when you're quite young, but they're often stories that have a lot of darkness in them. There's this strange contradiction between fairy tales. You're told them at a very young age, and yet they're not young stories. that's why adults still like reading them themselves. And so I was trying to capture a story that on one level seemed quite innocent and quite simple, and on another level was full of meaning and full of wider ideas. So that's why I wanted the troll story. And I also wanted to have this idea of a story you hear as a kid that you think nothing of. You're just like, this is a story you're told at bedtime to help you go to sleep. And then as an adult, you look at it and go, I never realized there was all this in it. And that's, in a way, what happened with my mum and myself. You know, I'd known her obviously all my life, and I was very close to her, but then you see someone completely differently, and you realize there's all this other stuff going on. And that, I think, is what that story is about. No, I think melancholy, for me, is a very important part of me as a person. I did my dissertation at university on melancholy. And it's interesting, because melancholy is very different from depression. Melancholy is about feeling this strange sense of being slightly removed from things. It comes back to what I said earlier about feeling the outsider. And I think melancholy is an interesting influence in writing generally, because it's a book that on the one hand deals with the darkness but tries to find struggles for light and warmth and hope. And I think that tension is important. And certainly with this story, it is as, you know, the melancholy is there, certainly. But in maybe a slightly different ways, I think people expect. Yes, it was difficult in the sense that trying to get it right. I felt like a real responsibility was on my shoulders. This was a story I had to get right. This was a story that meant a huge amount to me. You know, I knew I'd get to the point where I had to give the book to my mother to read, all those kind of questions. But at the same time, I found it, in a strange way, it made me feel lighter, like it needed to be written. And I felt like writing it helped me understand what happened and brought me closer to the events rather than push them further away. So in a strange sense, I feel more at peace now than I did before the book was written, even though the book was a great difficulty to write. So, yeah. I think it's a difficult question, but if I was, and I don't know whether I would call it a message, but I certainly think there are an enormous number of people struggling with a great deal of problems that they keep to themselves. And this is a story about all of the issues we hide from people. And I think this is, this can be destructive. I think you have to try at some point to try and deal with those, to open up, to share them. And this is a story about everyone in this story has secrets. The son has secrets, the mother has secrets, the father has secrets. The question is, what's the best way of dealing with that? And the way that they start off dealing with it is by hiding them all. And I think at some point they have to come to the surface and you have to deal with it. And I also just think generally, the issue of mental health has been pushed under the carpet and hidden. It's an issue of shame. And I refuse to accept that. I just think that's wrong. I think we have to start talking about it more, and not in terms of it being something we're embarrassed about. Too many people are suffering from it in silence, I guess. And I felt very personally protective now of that side of, you know, do I have a life motto? I don't know. I just, you know, what I would love to do is, first of all, it's, you know, they sound so glib when you say them, but my aim is to, I don't know, guess, people have so many problems. I try not to make any judgments. I love listening to people's lives. I think they're really interesting. I love hearing the difficulties they've faced. I love seeing how they overcome those difficulties. And I just try and be positive. I think I hate sort of a hatred in a way. You know, I think it becomes very destructive. I think those kind of attitudes are very corrosive. So I guess it's you know, essentially one of, you know, simplistic positivity. You know, it has some value in it, I think, in the end. No, I mean, first of all, with any charitable donation, the first thing to say is I'm in a lucky position. Lots of people are struggling just to pay bills. So it's not a judgment on anyone else. I just felt like if you sell things, it's fun to, you know, it's fun to give some of it away, and it has opened up all sorts of interesting experiences for me. When I went to Japan, they had just suffered the terrible tsunami. And so it was just made sense. And Japan, they bought a lot of the books. I think they bought over 500,000 copies of the books. It made sense to make a donation to the tsunami relief fund. It's very easy. I enjoy it. I enjoy going to see some of the charity work in England, like a homeless charity I support. I went and met some of the people who are using writing as a way of exploring their own problems, but also with the hope of getting published. That was very interesting. Again, it comes back to I enjoy meeting people. It's a good way of getting in touch with people. And
so you want to give something back?
Yeah, and it's just, and I can, and I'm in a very lucky position where I can afford to do that. It's not like I don't think of it for 1 second as an act of great nobility or makes me virtuous. In a way, it's something I enjoy rather than anything else.
And maybe it's good for your karma.
Maybe it's good for my soul. I don't know. I hope so.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Very
you.
interesting. Thank you.